Look at me. I mean, I look like a Star Wars fan. I honestly thought I was a Star Wars fan my whole life. But there's one big issue with me being a fan, and that is the fact that I have never watched any of the original 6 movies. The only Star Wars movies I have watched from beginning to end have been the Rey trio. I don't know what they're called. I've seen some parts of like the original trio, the ones that were back in the 1970s, but I was way younger and I do not remember any of it. I was such a big Star Wars fan that at the ripe age of 10, when I went to Disneyland, everything I wanted to do involved Star Wars in some way. I wanted to ride the rides, talk to those characters, and of course, buy their product. I made my mom spend $200 on that lightsaber from the custom lightsaber building factory. Worst financial decision I have ever made in my life. It wasn't my money, but it still is the worst one. And then if you look at my old videos, you can see a glimpse, a tiny little fraction of a Chewbacca plushie. Chewbacca was probably my favorite fictional character from the age of 8 to 13. Yet I never watched any movie with him inside of it. I was a fan of a movie series I wasn't a fan of. So after 18 years of telling myself that I'm a Star Wars fan, I decided to finally watch some of the movies. So I loaded up my pirated movie website and I started watching it in chronological order. I'm assuming if you are watching this video, you are probably a Star Wars fan in some way, but if not, it's okay. Now I want to say I went into this video without any bias, but I wanted to like the movies. I wanted to love the movies. I wanted to be a fan, and that may have affected my opinion in some way. So let's get into movie 1, The Phantom Menace, which according to IMDb is the worst out of this trio. First things first, the opening slideshow of text that happens in every Star Wars movie. Now at first I was blinded, thinking that, oh, this is a cool and interesting way to show what has been happening prior to this movie. But then I thought about it. I thought about it more and more, and I realized, no, it's not cool, and no, it's not interesting. I mean, the first thing you learn while writing a movie or a book is that you show, don't tell. And this is the worst form of just telling and not showing. This is a lore dump at its finest. So the movie starts out with our two characters. I'm going to call them Jim and Ken because their names are simply too long, and I'm not going to say their entire names every time I'm referring to them. And this is a way easier way to do so. They are trade ambassadors, but they are also Jedi. And well, the people they're trading with, they don't like Jedi. Because in this universe, you are either good or bad. There's no in between. If you've never watched Star Wars, here's a quick lesson. Jedi equals good, Sith equals bad. That's all you need to know, and you probably learned Star Wars just from that. So because these bad guys don't like Jedi, they decide to poison them in a room full of fumes. And we can only assume based off of what this character said right here.
They must be dead by now. Destroy what's left of them.
That they've been sitting in the poison for a good amount of time. But guess what? They're fine. Of course they are. Because they're Jedi, right? They're Jedi Knights. Oh my god, we're amazing. They gotta be okay. And then they jump out and kill these robots. They never explain how they survived. They didn't use no oxygen. They weren't, I don't even know. They didn't explain it though, so good storytelling. The fighting is simply its best aspect. I mean, lightsabers are cool. I don't think that's really an arguable fact. So Ken and Jim sneak their way off of the ship that they were on, and then they meet possibly the worst fictional character in all of fiction, Jar Jar Binks. Okay, another thing I like about this movie is shown rather early on. I like all these different like races and humanoid creatures there are, and how most of them are not only visually different, but there's also like some other aspect that you can tell, like, oh, this is this and that is that. You see this underwater group of beings, and their main surface level characteristic is that they're pretty stupid. But with the short like 3, 4, 5 minutes that we are with these characters, you can see the different personalities of each one they show. It's not just everyone is stupid. Not everyone has the same personality, just different body. And I can respect that. That takes a lot of work. And not only the humanoid creatures, but also the monsters. It all looks really cool, really well done. So some time passes, they get off that planet, they go to a different planet because their ship broke down. Their new ship broke down. I feel like stuff in this movie just happens. Like for no reason, it just happens. Like maybe if they showed that the ship did not look brand new, like it didn't just come out of the ship factory, then I could believe it randomly malfunctioned. But no, they just show a new shiny ship that was just scrubbed down by thousands of children. They're slaves in this universe. I don't want to just say it, but you get what I'm implying. And then after they break down, they go into the town, and then we meet the two really only other important characters for most of the series, Anakin and Padme. Anakin is a slave boy who is also somehow a amazing pilot, and Padme is a queen. So I'll let you decide if they fall in love or not. So there's this thing called pod racing. It's where you race pods. And this little 5-year-old boy is the only human who can do it. This is because we later find out he's a Jedi. I know by saying this, all you Star Wars nerds out there are gonna get mad, but I know that he was guided to Anakin by the Force. I know they were guided there by the Force, right? But that is simply lazy writing. That is lazy writing. What can I say? If stuff just happened because of this magical energy that you created in your universe, that does not equal good writing. I'm sorry. I could just write a book where, oh my God, this guy just has everything important in the world happens to him. That's not a good character. If nothing goes on outside of the set characters, like if there's no other things that happen, then the world building, everything is stagnant. Okay, so enough ranting. They need Anakin to win a pod race so they can buy the part they need for their what is it called? Ship, so that they can leave the planet. So after a long drawn out race, Anakin wins because everything goes right for these characters. I mean, literally everything goes right. Something can seem like it's going wrong, like the ship breaking down, but then they find the future strongest Jedi in the history of time on a random desert planet. Here we meet Palpatine formally for the first time. He is important in the third movie, so just keep him in the back of your mind. I'm not going to talk about him till then. So yeah. So Anakin here is told to be the person to bring balance to the Force. But this contradicts what they said not even a minute ago. They said there hasn't been a Sith in a long time. So is that already balanced? Or do they want there to be a Sith? Is that what balance is? Because to me, balance is a good medium between good and evil. It isn't all good, it isn't all evil, because that would be unbalanced. So theoretically saying, balance is a medium between good and evil, and there has only been good for who knows how many years. We can only assume that the boy is bringing evil. So they leave this planet that they were on, and then go back to the original planet they were on. There's a lot of planet hopping, it gets confusing, but you'll be okay. And this planet is where Padme, the queen, rules. This is our home planet. But oh no, the Sith are there and they're trying to take it over. So a whole war starts between droids and the Jar Jar Binks faction. At some point in the movie, Jar Jar Binks people allied with Padme's people. So that's why they're fighting. I don't think you really care, but I feel like I have to tell you. And here starts the second best fight in all of the 3 movies. Jim and Ken versus Darth Maul. It's the second best fight for this moment right here. So Jim dies, but it's kind of unrealistic. Like I love when characters die. But I know that might sound bad, but I love shows like Edge Runners because they are set in a realistic world where death happens to everyone, not just the bad guys. But I wish there was more of a dialogue during this fight or something like that because he just kind of dies and then it's just over. Anakin single-handedly at the age of 5 kills tens of thousands of people. Then Ken does this to Darth Maul. And we can assume he's dead, right? Right? They win the war and everything is happy. And that's the end of movie 1. I'll give my final thoughts to all the movies at the end. So let's just get into number 2. Attack of the Clones. This movie again starts out with the classic Star Wars scroll screen text, whatever you want to call it. In short, it's just saying that multiple solar systems want to leave the Republic. And I'm now realizing that I have not talked about the Republic. Basically, Republic equals NATO. Okay, so because of all these different solar systems wanting to leave the Republic, there's tension brewing in the air. A war might happen at any moment.
I guess I was wrong. There was no danger at all.
W foreshadowing. The little boy in the first movie, remember him? He was all like short and like a little boy. This is him now. And the guy next to him is Ken, the one who didn't die. And then this is the queen. Okay, we have our three main characters. Let's continue. So they meet for the first time in 10 years, and Anakin is just infatuated, but she is simply too nonchalant. Anakin is all sad, saying stuff like, "Oh, I've been thinking about you every day for the past 10 years, and she doesn't even recognize me." Yeah, go cry me a river. Someone tries to assassinate the Queen Padme, but Anakin and Ken manage to stop it. What follows is a 15-minute chase. The chase itself is not bad. In fact, it was good. It built the world up more. It showed like this random planet and what it looks like. But what if we made this chase scene, 5 to 7 minutes? And use some of that other time to show, instead of tell, you could show some of these other races being like, yeah, this is looking a little sus. We're gonna leave the Republic. This is not Riz. Do not do this.
You've changed so much.
You haven't changed a bit. You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams.
But right after that, they kiss for the first time. So maybe it is. I have no clue why they've done this, but in this movie, they've made it seem like Padme does not also like Anakin. Because after this kiss, they are pretty much just together for the rest of the movie and in the third movie, without ever explaining really why she acted like that. Like, they give it a mid-answer. It's a mid-answer to the question, and they needed to explain it more. Because this whole movie is just a romance movie. So why not, like, dig deep into the romance? Well, Padme and Anakin have been falling deeper and deeper into love. Ken has actually been doing some useful stuff. He went and found this planet, which is creating a clone army. And the person they're cloning is the bounty hunter who tried to kill Padme. What are the chances? That is the thing with so many things in this movie. I feel like 1 in a billion things happen over and over and over and over again. A 1 in a billion thing happened once? That's crazy, right? If 1 in a billion thing happened a billion times, then it's just a billion in a billion. Anakin and Padme went back to the original planet where Anakin was from to go see his mother, who he hasn't seen in 10, 12, 13 years. Who knows? He's 19 now, so he was 5, 6 before. But oh no, she's gone missing. And then what happens next could have been the best part in this movie. Could have been the best part in all 3 movies combined. Anakin's mom dies in his hand. And then he proceeds to single-handedly kill all of the people who caused it. This could have been an amazing scene showing Anakin's anger, showing his frustration, showing the darkness inside of him, showing his raw emotion while he slaughters these people. But they only showed him killing one enemy and then did a Microsoft slideshow transition to the next scene. It does drop a tough line, so I have to show you that because it is like one of the best lines of the movie.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
Okay, it might take a bit to explain what happens next, but it is a war scene, and probably the best out of all 3 movies. So Ken earlier got captured by the bad guys while looking for the bounty hunter, and Anakin and Padme went to save him, but they also got caught. So a group of Jedi come to save them, which doesn't really make any sense because why would you risk the lives of hundreds of Jedi for just 2? But it's okay, we'll let it slide, the war is cool. Anakin ends up losing his hand in a fight against a guy named Doo-Doo. I thought this was so much funnier while writing it down. Then Anakin and Padme get married. And that's pretty much it. Anakin gets his hand cut off by Doo-Doo. They get married. Conclusion. The third and final movie, Revenge of the Sith. And what you need to know before, if you have not watched these movies, is that between the second movie and the third movie, there has been a war raging. Enough war for a series with 133 episodes. I don't know if you remember, but in the first movie, the guy Darth Maul dies. This is where he comes back to life. He comes back to life in this 133 episode series. And I don't know if he dies again, but I just know he comes back to life. Oh my god, I wrote it down again. So Anakin fights Count Dooku, and he wins rather easily, which makes no sense. Because in the last movie, Yoda fought this guy, and he lost. And now, I assume you know who Yoda is, even if you have not watched the movies, but he is the most powerful character in this universe, supposedly. And Yoda and him tied. I don't know if I said he lost earlier, but Yoda and the Count tied. And then Anakin just comes in and just kills him easily, like in like a 3-minute fight. Another thing that makes no sense in this movie is the relationship between Anakin, our main character, and the Chancellor Palpatine. who I mentioned in the first movie. Remember, they have an almost father-son style relationship. I mean, Anakin told him about the things he did to those people who killed his mom, which is not part of the Jedi way. So you don't just tell any random about it. Yet they really haven't been seen on screen all that much before this movie, but in this movie, the relationship is already built. These movies are 2.5 hours each. There is enough time in that 7.5 hour span for them to build a relationship. Anakin gets back to whatever the main Jedi planet is called, and he sees Padme, and Padme brings him the gift of life.
Something wonderful has happened. Annie, I'm pregnant.
This is one of my favorite sound bites ever.
Hello there.
After watching this movie, I realized how many great sound bites have came from it. Chancellor Palpatine just confirmed that he is part of the dark side. He resides with the Siths. And now this is something that the movies probably do the best. It's probably their best attribute, and that is its foreshadowing. Watching these movies back for a second time, because I watched them 2 times while making this video, it makes so much sense that he's a villain. So many times I watched something like for the second time, I was like, oh, that's why he did this later on. This certain aspect later on. Anakin tells Mace Windu, who is a master Jedi, that Palpatine is a Sith, and Mace Windu goes to kill him. Mace is about to kill Palpatine, but suddenly Anakin shows up. And here you're gonna need some more backstory if you've never watched the movies. Anakin has visions where he can see the future, and what he saw was Padme dying in birth. Dying in not like her birth, but the children she's birthing. Palpatine found out somehow, and he told Anakin that in the dark side, there is a power that can revive people or keep them alive. I don't really know, and I don't really care. And that's a basic gist of the whole movie up to this point. Anakin chooses the dark side to save his wife, and he kills Mace Windu.
I need him!
Please, don't! No!
And this is another part that has like been foreshadowed well. They've constantly talked about Anakin's anger and fear that resides within him. And those are traits of the Sith. Something I'm learning right now is that the Jedi don't have any emotions. They're all psychopaths. They're not allowed to love. They're not allowed to be sad. They're not allowed to be angry. They're not allowed to be fearful. They're not allowed to be happy. They're not allowed to be anything. Then something crazy happens, which you would not expect. Anakin just goes and slaughters a bunch of children. And then the 3 main characters in the series up to this point meet at this lava planet. Ken and Anakin have a final fight to the death. Remember when I said that the other fight at the beginning of the video holds spot number 2? That is because this one holds spot number 1.
This is the end for you, my master.
Ken defeats Anakin, which is another thing that makes no sense. They have been talking about how Anakin is stronger, faster, smarter, better at the Force since the start of the second movie, basically. So they knew what the ending was going to be. Why build up to something else if you know what the ending is going to be? Then the babies are born somehow. I don't know how. This movie has not felt like it covered 9 months, but it's okay, I guess. Padme dies in childbirth, just like Anakin predicted. Anakin is made into Darth Vader and puts on his classic suit, and then movie 3 is over. Okay, now that I've watched all of these movies twice, I'm going to give my final thoughts in a ranking. The worst one I'm going to start out with, and that is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This movie was a glorified romance, and I'm someone who likes the romance genre. I think adding romance to a series or movie can greatly enhance it, but the romance was not good. It made you feel weird, and the fights really were not all that good either, besides the war, but it was so short. The war was so short. Nothing in this movie felt like it was needed to be shown. I'm going to be completely honest. It all felt like filler. They could have easily turned this into a text that scrolls down on the screen before another movie. The only good part was the idea of Anakin's revenge, because we didn't even get to see it. Attack of the Clones, 4.2 out of 10. In second place, we have The Phantom Menace, which is the first movie. This movie was all around just better. The characters were too young, so any awkward tension they had was something you could just laugh at and not feel grossed out at, like in the second movie. The race at the beginning, I did say it was long, but it was entertaining nonetheless. The fight at the end was good. The only terrible thing about this movie was how it looked, and I can't even blame them. It was 1999. The graphics aren't going to be the best. This movie probably had the best world building out of all 3 movies. And one last thing that doesn't really make any sense is why it's called The Phantom Menace. Who is the Phantom Menace? I have no idea. Like the other 2 movies, they make sense. Like their title makes sense, but I have no idea who the Phantom Menace is. For The Phantom Menace, I give it a 5.4 out of 10. I know that sounds like a low score based off the praise that I just gave it. Praise is comparing to the other Star Wars movies. The score, 5.4 out of 10, is compared to all movies ever. And then finally, in first place, we have Revenge of the Sith. This movie was by far the best out of the 3. I don't know if you realized, but my section on it was probably the shortest because there just wasn't that many terrible things to talk about. The fights were all good. Out of all 3 movies, the collective fights in this movie were better than both of the other 2 movies combined. The romance aspect was actually okay in this movie. Wasn't great, but it was okay. All the buildup with the first 2 movies felt like it just kind of like, it felt good in this movie. It felt well earned. I love death, like I said earlier, and this one did it well. Padme dying, Mace dying, most of the Jedi dying, and most of it felt warranted. Although I like death in movies, I don't like when it's a useless death that was just used to be a death. But that was just not the case with this movie. The movie would have probably gotten a higher score if you did not have to watch the first 2 to have any idea of what's going on. So I give Revenge of the Sith a 7.5 out of 10. And in conclusion, the movies aren't bad, but they aren't great. The way people talk about Star Wars makes you think that these are going to be some of the greatest movies you've ever seen. These movies are going to be life-changing. They're going to change the way I see cinema for the rest of my life. But it just wasn't like that. Let me change what I said earlier. The second one is bad. The first one is meh. And then the third one is okay. If the first 2 popped on TV while I was scrolling, I never do that, but hypothetically speaking, I would keep scrolling. If the third one hopped on, then I would watch it. And that's it for this video.